Basketball continues for the Badgers. A couple new stars, maybe some young players stepping up. We're going to talk about it on today's Locked On Badgers. All that and more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? I'm Ryan Herrings, your host of Locked On Badgers. Thank you for making this one of your first listens every day. We are here for your team every single day. I want to thank LinkedIn Jobs for helping you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. LinkedIn Jobs, you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. And let's bring the man on. Let's bring Justin on. And we are going to talk basketball. Listen, the French trip continues. And, the Badgers are 3-0. I want to kick it to you, though. There's some numbers coming up. I teased some stuff, but what are your big takeaways so far from this trip? I'm going to kick it over to you.
I think it's a really good opportunity for guys who haven't played a lot at the college level to get reps and feel better going into the fall basketball camp. I look at it, and we had a lot of unknowns, and we still have a lot of unknowns. I don't want anyone to take away anything too much from this because I don't even know how thrown together these teams are. So it's hard to say how locked in they are on any type of defensive strategy or anything else that they're doing. But that said, there's two ways this could have gone. One of them could have been a train wreck, and we have a bunch of guys who we were hoping that would take steps forward that show absolutely nothing. And the other is we get some guys who we feel like we're a little bit more confident in coming into the fall. I think we got number two. Mm-hmm. There's several guys. Essegian, a big one. You and I both talked about him a little bit offline. I did not expect him to score like this right off the bat. I mean, it's not like the kid blew up for 20, but it's not uncommon for a kid who comes in out of high school to kind of just float around on the court and not, be aggressive. They don't want to get in the way, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't seem to be him at all. He seems very much in attack mode. Incredibly quick release.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I can't think of anybody that I've seen on the Badger team in the last 15 years or so that's had that quick of a release.
No.
We've never had a guy like that.
We've had really good shooters, but even the good shooters haven't had that lightning release.
He's got a little bit of who's the Dookie that everyone hated back in the day?
Grayson?
No.
I was gonna say
earlier.
Don't tell people
the one that played in the NBA for he's retired now.
Trajan Langdon from the Alaskan.
No. I know you're talking after him.
I don't know.
Played for Philly.
I don't know.
Black hair. I can't think of his name right now. This is driving me nuts. I can picture him, but I can't. Anyways, very quick release. He was leaned on a lot, saying that he wasn't a great athlete. He was a good enough athlete to score 14 a game in the NBA. Now, that's not necessarily what we're going to see here, but the same type of release. He's more athletic than what we expected. I think there's game there. It would not shock me to see him be a good scorer in college. Now, having seen a little bit of him.
I think, we had Jason Jordan from Sports Illustrated on, and he said he wouldn't give any names, but he said Essegian was lighting up some 5-star kids in camps. There was some perimeter 5-star players who couldn't guard them. And what that tells me is, so to your point, Essegian the last two games, double-digit points both the last two games, which I think is super impressive for freshmen. And obviously they're playing around with rotations. Wisconsin is a great guardist, but it tells me he's not just a stand-up sniper. He can score in the paint. He can score mid-range. He's got a lot of tools in his toolbox for a freshman.
What people don't understand is with a release that quick, it's going to play up his athleticism because guys are going to close out really hard on him, which means he's going to get the benefit of the doubt and be able to go by guys with either a shot fake or just them coming that hard when they see he's got space, which is going to give him opportunity to go by guys, even if he's an average athlete. And I think he's probably a little above average. He's not a guy who's going to go and start throwing down dunks like crazy, but he can do it. He's a good athlete. I think he's a guy who, because he's such a good shooter, people get dismissive of his athleticism. The other guy who I had to see something from it. And you and I he's
know
our
where you're
boy.
going. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
our boy, Ilver.
Let's go.
Yep. Cannon threes, showing some
Yep.
power in the inside. Here, listen, there are people that are dogging his athleticism. And what I will say is he's a little bit of a combo guy. He's a 3-4. So he's going to struggle with faster threes. But he's also going to be much bigger than faster threes. So he's going to have the ability to post those guys and cause problems in other ways. He's a guy whose upside is very high if he uses his athleticism well, and he becomes more skilled. And I say that because in some ways he's a little bit like Decker in that he's a guy who's going to have so much length that if you're putting him on a 3, they're going to struggle with his size. If you're putting him on a 4, he's going to be quicker than that guy. So there is some ability there. Now, obviously things need to be cleaned up, but it's very promising to see him start hitting threes at a high rate on this.
Yeah.
Now he's not taking a ton of shots, but he's hitting the ones that he's got. So, I mean, what people need to understand when we look at the shooting from this trip, we shot terrible last year, and it wasn't because there weren't open looks. We had a ton of open looks that guys just completely botched. And Wisconsin, realistically, because of Davis, should have shot much higher than they did.
Oh, yeah.
So seeing this within it, where we don't have a guy who needs to be focused on and having guys hit at a high rate, even if teams aren't closing out super hard. Listen, until you get to March, a lot of the teams, unless it's a grudge match or it's a conference game, don't close out crazy hard on defense. So it's one of those things where you'll see it, probably 4 times a game where a guy's going to get a wide open look because somebody loses track of somebody. So there'll be opportunities to hit some of these shots. They just need to hit them. And it looks promising so far.
Yeah. Let's stay on Ilver for a second because we talked about Ilver earlier, Markus Ilver, who really the red flags for me abounded last year, right? Because this was a team with zero depth, especially as the season went on. Like Ray Guard was basically playing 5 starters and then a prayer coming off the bench. And you had this Ilver dude who is athletic. Like he is athletic for his size. Like you said, he's not Vince Carter, but he is a good athlete with a nice looking shot. And the dude couldn't crack the rotation. It drove me nuts. However, you and I also both talked about this is a dude that has the upside to really make the Badgers better. Right, where a guy like Carter Gilmore, for example, Carter Gilmore can play and he can give you 5 to 10 minutes, but he doesn't have the upside to make the team actually better when he's on the court.
He's not as explosive.
He's not.
He doesn't have the size.
He's not as explosive. Like his role on the court is to get on the court and
make the smart plays,
and keep the score where it's at. Right, like don't lose ground. But a guy like Ilver, if he hits his upside, he's a guy that can increase the lead or cut into the deficit if he's playing well. So that's why he's so important. And seeing him, be one of the leading scorers in this mini 3-run stretch or 3-game stretch is awesome. The Badgers still have one more game coming up, but it's been awesome to see him score, and it's definitely something I want to continue talking about as we go forward in the show. Any other big takeaways that you had before we jump into the next?
I'm expecting a pretty big season from Crowl, I think.
Yeah.
And also Hodges. I was impressed with the fact Hodges seems to be able to rebound well and not foul so far on this trip. So I don't know how tight they're calling things, but it's promising that we're not seeing him get in foul trouble with his first experience.
Yeah.
I do think he's a little undersized. I saw some of the footage of him in the highlights, and I'm like, man, he can't be more than 6'8", 6'9". He's not a big boy, but most games you'll get away with that. There's not a lot of teams we're going to be facing that have 6'11", 7-footers. And if you do, you're going to put Crowl on them. And there's not many teams that have a backup that's also 7 foot. So if you're putting a 6'9" guy on a 6'10" guy, yeah.
And they have like 7 players, it feels like, who are.
Well, I mean, we need to do like a Voltron kind of thing and stack guys together to create one big guy.
No, your point is correct, though. For the most part, you're not playing Purdue-like front courts, right? It just is what it is with that team. For some reason, they always have a couple 7-footers. Coming up on Locked On Badgers, we're going to continue talking basketball. It's a really fun stretch to talk about as they're really getting their season underway. We're going to keep Justin on the show, and we're going to talk about a few players that have exceeded expectations and some numbers. We're going to go back and forth with some of the numbers the team has put up. But first, today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn remains just your number one source for a professional network of people to get your job out there, get the right applicants in the door. It's something I've used professionally in my career several times. I'm an IT guy in my day job, and it's something that I've used to get interviews and get jobs. LinkedIn is my number one choice for a professional network. You create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn using our special offer. Free job post reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network. Add your job, and the people in LinkedIn will help you find the right candidate door. They have tools that can screen out applicants that have no business coming through your interview door. It makes it easier and win-win for both sides. People don't want to go into an interview that they're not prepared for either. This is win-win. LinkedIn is a tremendous job of doing this. Simple tools, screening questions, lets you focus on the right candidates with the right skills in moments, just in instants. That's why small businesses continue to rate LinkedIn Jobs the number one place for delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. I want to thank everyone again for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. We talk about your team every single day, and we're here for it. Let's bring Justin back on the show. I want to keep talking basketball here. Like, I'm stoked for it. And I talked after the first show. I did like a lengthy recap, and I had one guy in the comments say, I've never seen anybody dig so deep into the box score against a D3 team. I'm like, listen, I'm telling you right now, the wins and losses don't matter.
No,
but you can read tea leaves, right? And I love the comment, by the way. I'm here for all the snark. I really am. Because I also acknowledge, like, we are taking deep dives on stuff that we're not playing Illinois, Purdue. Like, what happens here isn't necessarily what's going to happen in the season. So I'm acknowledging that, right? But at the same token, you'd rather have them shoot well than not, right? You'd rather have Hodges rebounding than not.
We how many games did we shoot 40+% from three last season?
Against bad teams. We didn't shoot well against bad teams last year anyway. So seeing the ball go in, and that's where I want to start. Justin, in 2 of the 3 games, the Badgers have shot it really well from 3. The first game was 44%. This last game, you had Wall hit 1, Essegian, Crowl, Chucky hit 2, Ilver hit 2, right? So you're seeing a pretty good percentage, but you're also seeing a lot of different people shoot it. Do you feel any more confident, not just based on what we've seen in these 3 games, but based on the personnel coming back, do you feel confident this year's Badger team is going to be a better shooting team than last year's?
Well, let's dig into the guys who we think are probably going to do the bulk of the lifting there. Chucky, I think, is going to be a plus 3-point shooter. And by that, I think he's going to be 36 or above. I would say I think Jordan Davis is going to be another plus shooter from outside.
So he's a guy that struggled last year.
Yes,
but he did.
Young. But the shot looked good. It was one of those things where you saw a guy put it up, and it was most of the time it was clean. We saw Gilmore completely miss at times on some of his shots, and it's like, okay. And that, to his credit, he looks much better so far in this tournament. So here's the way I look at it. Essegian, I think we both agree. We expect big things from him as a shooter. I think Chucky will be a good shooter. I think Davis will be a good shooter. And I think Ilver,
do you think, let me stop you in Essegian though, because do you think he'll play this year?
I do, actually. Because
guard doesn't trust freshmen playing defense. I'm just good or bad. Like that's a whole nother discussion. But it's really hard to crack that Bo Ryan, Greg Gard defensive rotation as a freshman.
This is a team that I think is going to struggle to find potentially scoring off the bench. And I think that he's a guy that can provide that. Now, will he be putting up huge numbers? No. But do I think there's going to be games where he could pop off for 10? I do. I think he can give you 15 minutes. If you're thinking more than that, then it's probably too much.
So I agree with you that he can score. Again, I feel like it still comes back to the bigger point of will Greg Gard trust him to play defense?
Sure.
And I'm telling you, history says he probably won't, right? And that kills me a little bit because I think that focus is a little too crazy for Gard and the Bo Ryan coaching tree. Like,
true, and there is
some defensive lapses to get a good 3-point shooter on the court more often. I just don't know if Gard's going to do it, man.
Yeah, there is some depth at the shooting guard position, which is the other part that's a problem. Because I think you and I both like Lindsey. So I think we both, and he's another plus 3-point shooter. I really like his stroke. He's a guy who, if you leave open, I feel confident that he'll knock it down more times than not. I also think he's actually a solid athlete. You and I, have both talked about this. Evan Flood, who's seen quite a bit of him, who does a lot of the following in state of Wisconsin recruiting, said that he was a legitimate Power 5 guy. Wisconsin didn't go after him, but he was a legitimate Power 5 guy. Wisconsin got him as a, transfer in. That was a nice play. Last year, he had a hurt hip that he was coming back off of surgery. So to expect him to come out and start playing like crazy is probably a little bit unreasonable. We also have, is it Klesmet?
Yep, Max Klesmet.
Yep.
He's another guy. He hasn't really filled it up much in these 3 games, but I think we all expect him to be a good
comfortable
shooter,
out on the court. Like, he doesn't look like he doesn't belong. Now, I don't take necessarily scoring as a big deal in that regard, as long as he's doing good things.
Right.
And we know he can shoot. So it's a matter of, as long as he's not a net negative out on the court and he takes the opportunities when they're there, cool, we're fine. I do think we are going to need a guy or two that's going to have to prove that they can be a scorer.
So let's look at that shooting. So you have Hepburn as a plus shooter. I agree with that. Essegian, if he plays, we'll leave that. But if he's on the court, he's a plus shooter.
Yeah.
I think you and I both agree Klesmet can shoot. So I think we have 3 players there. What about Crowl? Do you feel confident? High-low, Crowl pops. They kick it out to him on top of the key. You think Crowell's going to be a 35% shooter?
I actually think he'll take a step forward. I do think he'll be around 35. Do I think he's going to be 40 plus? No. So I think he'll be a guy that if you're not going to cover him, he will hit shots. Do I think he's a guy who's going to take a lot of them? No. It's not going to be like Kaminsky, where if you just leave him there all day, he's going to just keep drilling you. I think Crowell's a guy who you're probably going to see like maybe 3 a game at maximum. But I don't think he's going to kill you. Like we had the part of it was last year, so many of the guys that we relied on to be shooters were young guys who were getting their feet wet for the first time. So we had Davison and Johnny Davis, who Davis didn't like taking a ton of threes for a guy who was a shooter. He's a mid-range guy. So it really was Chucky taking actually quite a few threes, and as well as Jordan Davis coming in and Gilmore. Actually,
that's another one. So and Jordan Davis is another one that you think is a plus or a good shooter.
I think he's got a good stroke. I think it will start. A lot of these guys, you could tell that they started rushing. You get guys when they come in off the bench and they don't have a lot of experience who, like, this is my moment. I need to take it, and they speed up.
Yeah.
Suddenly the stroke is a little bit off. It's the same thing in the NBA. We talked about the Bucks playoffs. The difference between the regular season and the playoffs is everyone closes out harder, so everyone's shooting 1/10 to 2/10 of a second faster, and it throws off your rhythm. So it's the same thing with the guys getting their feet wet in college. You rush it. You don't have to shoot it as quick as you do, but you want to get it up because it's your opportunity, and you end up moving too fast.
Well, I feel like right there, if we maybe potentially add Ilver in, right, and we maybe potentially add Lindsay in, I think that's 6 to 7 shooters we feel could be solid shooters right there. Now, all of them, it doesn't always work out that way, right? All those dudes aren't going to be 35% shooters, but I think you can build a case where you say this could be a team of 6 to 7 pretty good shooters, maybe no elite shooters, right? Because I wouldn't even expect Essegian to be an elite shooter his first year, but this should be a better shooting team. I would agree with that. And let me tell you, really quick on Jordan Davis. I don't have any way to back this up, and Jordan Davis would probably say no. I just wonder, though, if it's hard being on the team when your twin brother blows up and you're shooting like 22%, right? I just wonder if it's going to be a little easier for him this year with the shadow gone. And I know he probably wouldn't say that, and I'm sure their bond on the court also, I know it meant a lot, right? They've talked about it, but I just, as a human being, like there's fan sections everywhere. I mean, we saw it on comment boards, like, why is Jordan Davis so much worse than his twin? I mean, stupid comments, but like that stuff's out there, right? I just wonder if it's going to be a little freer for him this year outside of that shadow.
He's actually played solid in every game they've had so far in the tournament. I think he scored at least 8 in every game. So he's a guy, if he gives you 6 points a game, that's great off the bench. We didn't have that last year. 6 points is a big deal.
So let me flip it this way. I think you and I probably agree here. I'm going to put you on the spot. You and I probably agree the shooting should be better. I feel like we have a better roster of shooters. But is there anybody you feel really confident you need a bucket, their best defender is on your best scorer? Like, because Johnny could get a bucket against anybody. I'm not sure if anybody on this team can get a bucket against anybody.
I feel pretty good about Chucky.
Do you? Okay.
I think he's somebody, just his pace with the ball. Now, if he's getting doubled, yeah, I don't feel real comfortable with it, because if you're going to show multiple on him, I don't know how he reacts to that. But one-on-one or off a screen, I feel pretty comfortable with him putting up a shot.
Okay.
And I think that he will be, like, he very well could lead the team in shooting this year. I wouldn't be shocked to see him at 37, 38%. I think the team legitimately this year is probably in the 34, 35% range, which is a huge bump from last year.
Yeah, that's much better for sure. My concern with Chucky, I think he'll figure it out because he's an old school dude. I think he has an old school game. I think he's a gym rat. I think he's super skilled. He can shoot the ball. He's strong. He's physical. He's obviously not fazed by anything. My only real concern with Chucky is when we're playing a team like, you remember those Rutgers teams last year? Every guard, every wing is like 6'7", and Chucky is just going to have to score on some bigger guards, right? And he's going to have to use his quickness,
and I don't know if he's always comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I'm just not sure exactly how that's going to play out at times, but I have a lot of faith in him. I think he's going to be a great guard for the Badgers for the next 3 years, quite frankly. That would be my concern. I just don't know if we have a go-to scorer who can get a bucket whenever we need it. And I want to say it's Chucky. I'm just not sure if it is. And frankly, there's no one else on the roster I think that you could even consider in that category.
I think you're going to have 3 above-average scorers in Chucky, Wall, and Crowl this year. I actually expect Crowl to have a pretty healthy bump this year. But yeah, it might be tough. We're going to need some guys. It's going to be a team effort. Like, I expect the offense to flow so much better this year because there is nobody that's a ball stopper. So everybody's going to have to keep moving and making plays, and it probably will make it easier for other guys to get shots and rhythm and everything else because of the fact that they're just going to continue and have to run their offense. Sometimes that's the best way to have it for guys, because then they just go out there and focus on running the offense rather than getting locked into standing around and watching somebody else show out.
Yeah, although it is nice when that somebody else showing out drops 37 against Purdue, right? Yeah. But I agree. Like, it should be a more fluid offense, but it could also very realistically be a worse offense if the shooting doesn't come along, and then you still don't have Johnny Davis. All right, coming up, we're going to do a little big picture on the basketball team. Big takeaways from this 3-game stretch. Do we feel better about the team? Do we feel worse about it? We're going to keep Justin here and continue talking Badgers basketball. I'm excited. But first, today's show is also brought to you by our good friends at Built Bar. Built Bar remains my number one nutritional sidekick, my only bar I eat anymore, quite frankly. I throw it in the backpack. I go to the gym. I have a couple. I work out in my office, so I have a couple in my office drawer. My kids rate it. The churro is awesome. Really, anytime a company can make something cinnamony, marshmallowy, healthy, I'm all on board that. I'm buying that ticket to that nutritional train every day of the week. Built Bar, everything is 100% pure chocolate, 17 to 20 plus grams of protein, low sugar, great flavors, a lot of variety. The website's awesome and easy to use. You can track down whatever you're looking for, really, flavor-wise and macronutrient-wise is on Built Bar. And again, there's a reason Locked On has made it. The people in Locked On have made it like their number one nutritional choice. It's just a phenomenal company. And again, everything tastes good. Mint brownie, coconut almond, tons of different flavors. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it delicious first. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15, Locked On 15. Get 15% off your order. Promo code LOCKED ON15 for 15% off your order at Built.com. We're going to bring Justin back on the show. As always, I want to thank everybody for making this one of your first stops every day as we talk Badgers basketball, football. Both seasons coming like a train, like a runaway freight train, and we're here for it. So I want to throw a couple kind of buy or sell bigger picture questions to you, Justin. And again, I want to make sure people understand we're not trying to overreact to a kind of a quote unquote meaningless 3-game set, but we also want to react to it. I heard a great quote one time from a coach, and he said, I was at a coaching clinic actually, and someone said, what do you do in the first couple games if it doesn't go right? He said, it's important not to overreact, but it's also important to react. So 3 games worth of data here. Let's react a little bit and let's read some tea leaves, I guess is what I'm saying. So my first big one, man, is just after these 3 games, seeing some highlights on Twitter, seeing the box scores, do you feel better about the team than you did before these 3 games?
Yes. With basically a lot of the guys who I thought were question marks slightly answered some of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I feel like they're locks to be, decent players this year? I don't yet. And I don't think we'll have those answers until we see the non-conference schedule play out and see what guys do. We've gotten good answers from guys that we know are not flat out no's, which is a big deal. Now, I will say this, we didn't really go into them. We need McGee to kind of get more efficient. Like, he's got to clean it up a little bit. I love his quickness. I love his athleticism. And the guy has no fear. And I think that's nice to have off the bench, because a lot of times when the guy's coming off the bench, nobody wants to shoot the ball.
Mm-hmm.
They're all afraid of making mistakes. He's not a guy who's afraid to.
Yeah, I love that point you're
helps.
making. I love the point you're making there with McGee really quick, because that's something I talked about in the first show I did about him. I want somebody kind of coming off the bench who will just go and try to hunt shots and be a little chaotic, because the Badgers, quite frankly, need a little bit of that. I'm kind of low-key glad that Bo Ryan's not his coach, right? Because I feel like the leash for
He's
Kamari
out there for
would be,
30 seconds and back out.
He would go to the scoring table and Bo Ryan would yank him back in, right? No. I see that look in your eye. No, I really like McGee off the bench, but I totally agree. His first game, he was like 3 of 10, I think. So you can tell he's hunting shots. He is going to have to find that balance, right? Because I think his role, his value to this team is kind of being that microwave scorer coming off the bench. But with that, he's going to have to avoid the silliness, the bad shots and turnovers. But I agree. Yeah. All right. You ready for the next one?
Yep.
Okay. So again, based a little bit on what we've seen, but also what we knew of him coming into the program, what we've heard talked about. Are you somewhat comfortable with Hodges as the backup 5? Or is that still a gigantic hole on the roster behind Crowl?
I think the bulk of the games that they play, I think he'll be okay. I think that there are a few teams that he's going to be a problem. And we would still like to have somebody who's 6'10" or above that has just the size. I don't know how strong he is. He's not a huge dude. You see the highlights of him, and I was like, man, who is that guy? He almost looks like a big, small forward.
He does, yeah.
And I'm watching him, and I'm like, well, he plays hard, though. He seems to get himself in good spots. Now, you and I both know it's not all about size in the post. Like, some of it is being the quicker guy and getting to the right spots. As long as he plays physically and doesn't, make mistakes with his hands and stuff like that, he could probably stay out of foul trouble. Now, it's not going to matter against a guy like Edey because, let's be honest, he's going to have a half a foot or more on him in terms of height. So the length there, he's going to basically be shooting over him like unencumbered.
Yeah, it'll be simple in the post for Edey. But Edey's a unicorn, though, in college basketball. There's very few of those dudes.
And your goal is probably going to be to speed it up when he's out there, if you have Hodges out there, and be like, let's run the floor and let's push him. Tire him out. Because if you're going to let him play in the half court, then we're in trouble.
I got to be honest, man. I still feel like this is a big hole.
It is, but I don't know what you can do at this point.
Well, there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing you can do at this point, but I think you and I both know it's highly unlikely we're going to go this entire season and Steven Crowell's never going to get in foul trouble. He's never going to miss a game, get nicked up. I mean, God forbid he doesn't get majorly hurt, right? That would be a disaster for the Badgers with this roster. But there's going to be a game or two where that backup 5 spot's going to be super important. And the Badgers are really going to miss not having a guy like Chris Vogt last year. And I think I don't know. Listen, I'm not going to say it's easy. I think the coaching staff dropped the ball not getting another post player this offseason. I think
they'd admit that. I think they badly wanted one, and I think they just couldn't get it to come together.
They just couldn't get to. And again, that's not the easiest thing in the world. It's easy for me to say they needed another 5. Like, it's not a lot of 5s want to come to Madison probably and back up with Steven Crowl. Like, Chris Vogt was great, but Chris Vogt, those dudes are kind of hard to find too. That upperclassman that's okay coming in and playing 10 minutes. Most people transfer to be a starter, and that's not going to happen here. But I think there's going to be games this year where it really hurts us.
Unless they can figure out a way to play small and play well.
Sure.
I do think they're a team that can play hustle, but I don't know if they have the shooting for it. So that's kind of the trade-off there. Like, if you're going to be a team that's going to come out there and play 5 small, you got to shoot the lights out from outside.
It would have to be Tyler Wall at the 5, right, and then 4 shooters around him. And whoever those 4 shooters are, guard would have to figure out.
Or you could play 3. I suppose you could play 3 forwards, Ilver, Wall, and Hodges out there, and just be like, we're going to make it kind of
I think then you
the
have two
aggregates.
non-shooters, though. With Wall and Hodges, you have two non-shooters. And now you're going to be small, and you're not going to space it. Right? Like,
Yeah, that's fair, too.
I think you need
Yeah, I think you're right there.
I think if you go small, you got to build around Wall and just say Wall's the one dude in the post, and then we get everyone else is spaced out. This was fun, man. Like, a lot of basketball news, a lot of football news coming up. We're going to keep Justin on the show, keep getting him on the show, because I think we're smarter when he joins. You get a lot of good feedback, by the way, in the comments, Justin. People really like hearing your takes. So, as always, I appreciate it. Really thank to everyone for tuning in, listening, either on anywhere where you get the podcast or on YouTube. Really appreciate everyone doing that. And a bunch more football content coming out this week, so stay tuned for that. Until next time on Wisconsin, really appreciate everyone tuning in.